Hello everyone, this is Alberta and welcome to Politics in Plain English. I am going to be talking about a very hot topic today, and that is O.J. Simpson. He's been freed. Was he guilty or not? That's the very hot topic. Now, I don't know whether or not he committed the crime against his wife and Ron Goldman, but I will tell you my experience as a registered nurse. If I had been sitting there in the jury pool as long as, just like you, we all would have had to find him not guilty. And the reason for that, I am going to tell you now. My background is nursing. I was a registered nurse for like 15 years. I worked in the city and suburbs of Chicago, and then when I moved to California, I worked as a visiting nurse. And one of the duties as a registered nurse is that you had to collect blood from your patients. And there was strict requirements that if you were collecting blood, the person that you collected blood from had to be the last visit of the day. They did not want you driving all around town with someone else's blood in your car. And I always thought that was kind of curious, interesting, because I said if you were ever a crook and you had somebody else's blood in the car, you could actually, pin stuff on people. But anyway, going back to my story, when I went out to the homes, I had to draw blood. Once I drew the blood, I had to shake it because there was preservative in the bottom of the vial. And if you did not shake it to mix it with the preservative, then the blood would coagulate. That means it would clump together and you would not be able to run a test. Also, when I went out to the home to collect the blood, inside the vial itself, there was an automatic suction. So when you stuck the needle into the vein, the suction would pull the blood out. If you pulled it out too soon before the suction stopped, you would not have enough blood to run the test. I know because I did this by accident. I went out to a patient's home and I was so happy because I had gotten the vein the first time and I had collected the blood, and I went to the lab and I discovered that I had not put enough blood in the vial, so it would not run the test. So I had to go all the way back to this person's house, and I had to apologize and everything, and I had to collect some more blood. With that being said, O.J. Simpson, when we look at what actually happened to him, the lab tech that collected O.J. Simpson's blood was supposed to take it to the lab himself. You were never, ever supposed to give that blood to some stranger who was not a medical professional. In the case of O.J. Simpson, the lab tech gave it to Detective Vanhatter. That was a big no-no. Second, the blood had already been coagulated with the preservative. So Mr. Vanhatter said he was going to take the blood to the lab himself. But he didn't. He went back to O.J. Simpson's home with this blood, and it mysteriously appeared on the fence. It appeared in the car and on the sock in Simpson's home. Now, this normally would be, hey, great evidence, but for one specific thing, there was preservative that was found in the blood that was on the fence, in the car, and at his home in his sock. Now, people do not believe preservative. Preservative is something that is added so that the blood will not coagulate. And when Mr. Vanhatter turned the blood in, it was missing blood in the vial. That means that test could not have been run because like I said before, I had that experience, and it will not run. They cannot do that test. So, the sock in his home that had the blood in it. Now, if O.J. had been wearing the sock, there would have been no way blood would have been able to go through the sock. With his leg in the sock, it's impossible. It would not travel through the leg. So that sock had to be off his leg in order for it to go through the entire sock. Okay, Another thing too that was interesting at the trial, they brought out that originally there were gloves that were mentioned by the detective who supposedly found these gloves, but one of the gloves mysteriously disappeared, and it was found over at O.J. Simpson's home. Now, the thing about blood, it cannot be out in the air for hours and remain moist. It can't remain wet after all this time. And that was Mark Furman who said he found it. So when the glove is found at Simpson's house, it is still wet and is laying on top of leaves which were falling from the trees. None of the leaves that fell from the tree actually fell upon the open glove of O.J. Simpson's. Impossible. The glove could not have been wet after all those hours, and at least one leaf would have fallen on top. So that makes everything about this so far a suspicious case. And there was also the bloody boot that was supposedly found at the murder site. They looked and they searched, they went to the stores, and they could not find a boot that matched that exactly of O.J. Simpson. And there was another thing too, there was the bloody glove. Actually, O.J. Simpson had cut his hand. Just amazingly, after all this had happened, they found he had a cut hand. But the gloves that he had been wearing, even though they were size too small, there was no cut on his glove. It would have been virtually impossible to be in a knife fight and you're cutting someone and you cut your hand, but your glove doesn't get cut. It's impossible. That's why all of this evidence makes no sense. And I know no reasonable human being would have wanted to be found guilty with this kind of evidence. So I don't know whether or not he did the crime or not, but I do believe that the detective Vanhatter, we called him the Mad Hatter, and the detective Mark Furman, we call him Mark Vernon, the information that they gave at the trial proved that they were liars. These men felt that O.J. was guilty, and they were about to prove a guilty person was guilty. That's what they thought. So anyway, if you had been there for this trial and had been a juror, you would have had to come to the exact same conclusion. So all I can say, politics in plain English, I'm going to give it to you the way that I understand it. Thank you.